All right, this is lesson 1.06, using coordinate geometry. And we are going to skip to the skill review to save some time. Simplify -15 divided by -3. Negatives will cancel out. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Skill review 2, evaluate the expression. First, we are going to use PEMDAS. So if you remember, that's an E. Parentheses first, so 15 divided by 5 is 3. And then 3 squared, so exponent 3 squared is 9. We do have a set of parentheses here, however, that indicates multiply. So multiply is our next step. 5 times 5 is 25. And I'll bring down the plus sign. And so 25 plus 9 is 34. What are the coordinates of point K? We always move from left to right first when we are naming coordinates. So we'll go to the right, 4, and then up 1. So our coordinates are 4, 1. And then for this triangle here, they want you to use Pythagorean theorem. So 12 squared. So much harder to write with a mouse. Plus 16 squared equals x squared. And then to get rid of a square root, you would just take the square root of both sides. And that cancels out. And this, after you put it in your calculator, is equal to 20. Moving on to the words you know. I'm going to click off this. There we go. Or words to know, sorry. We have slope. So hopefully this is a review, but if not, it's rise over run. We have our slope formula here. Its symbol is the lowercase m. So this is the difference in y's over the difference in x coordinates of 2 points. Midpoint is a point that divides the segment into 2 congruent parts, similarly to a segment bisector. So now AM is equal to MB. The midpoint formula we have as capital M, so be careful between the two. Capital M is the average of the x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates. Since they're 2 coordinates, we would divide by 2. So you take the x's, add them, divide by 2, y coordinates, add them, divide by 2, and then you always leave your answer as a coordinate pair. And then distance formula is derived by the Pythagorean theorem, and that image kind of shows you how you get the distance formula. I highly recommend writing your formulas down in your notebook because you will need them. All right, looking at slope, so rise over run. I'm going to jump down to the guided example. As we move from left to right, our line is going down. And so we know that this is going to be a negative slope. So we're going to trace a path from one point to the other using our grids. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We went down 8. And then we moved to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So we moved, oops, let me get this back. 8 units down and 6 units to the right. -8 over 6 reduces to -4 over 3. Guided example 2, determine the slope of the line. So I'm going to get my pen again. And as we move from left to right, our slope is going up, so we're going to have a positive slope. So I'm going to trace with my pen up 1, 2. So we went up 2 and then over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our slope is 2/7. Moving on to distance. So to find the distance between 2 points, we have our distance formula. Please remember that distances are always positive. We have a couple examples here if you do need the extra help. What is the distance between the 2 points? So we have the coordinates 6, -2, and 3, -9. They went ahead and are using the Pythagorean theorem, so finding the difference between the x's and the y's. So 7 units is the difference between the 2 y coordinates, and 3 units is the difference between the x coordinates. So we're going to substitute 3 in here, 7 in here, and then do the square of each of those. So 3 squared is 9, 7 squared is 49. And then the last step is to add them together so that it gives me 58. And then to solve for x, our last step is to take the square root of both sides. And so when you are entering your answers, you are going to write SQRT, parentheses, and then enter in the number, so 58, and close the parentheses with no spaces. You do not have a square root button on your keyboard. So we are going to type SQRT. Example 2, so classify ABC by its side length. So we are going to find the distance or the measure of each of these 3 sides. For every answer, write it in the form of SQRT. For any answers with the square root. If it simplifies to a whole number, fine. Leave it as that. They've already gone ahead and inputted the coordinates into the equation for you. I highly recommend still writing down these steps so that you can do this on your own on the practice. But here we have 2 squared, which is 4, and then 3 squared is 9, which gives me 13, and then I need to still take the square root of that. And so I am going to type in SQRT 13. For side BC, again, they've gone ahead and put in the coordinates for you. But just get into a healthy habit of writing these into your notes so that you can practice yourself. -2 squared is a +4. So remember that is -2 times itself, which is also -2. Negative times a negative makes a positive, and 1 squared is 1. And I still have to take the square root of that. 4 plus 1 is 5. And then the final side, AC, we have 4 squared is 16, and 2 squared is 4. We are not going to reduce this, even though you can. So we are going to write square root of 16 plus 4 is 20, and submit. For the purposes of this, we are not going to reduce it. So we have square root 13, square root 5, and square root 20. None of the sides are at all equal, so we have a scaling triangle. Moving on to midpoint, we have the midpoint of a segment labeled as capital M. Again, you have your formula. It's the average of the x's and the average of the y's. So add them together, divide by 2, because there's 2 points. Add them together, divide by 2. Few examples. We're going to jump down to guided example 1. We are finding the midpoint of each of these sides of this square. Find the midpoint of side IL. They've already inputted the numbers I don't know if inputted is a word. Already substituted in the coordinates. And so we just have to finish it. So 2 plus a negative 1 is just 1. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. And it says to leave your answers as improper fractions. So this is going to be 1/2 and negative 1/2, and in simplest form, sorry. Improper fractions in simplest form. Do not use mixed numbers. Find the midpoint of side IJ. 2 plus 5 is 7. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. And so now we are going to write these in. You cannot reduce 7 over 2. It is already reduced for you. Find the midpoint of side JK. So same thing here. 5 plus 2 is 7. 4 plus 1 is 5. And then we will write our fraction. So 7 over 2. 5 over 2. And then find the midpoint of side KL. 2 plus negative 1 is a 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. And so our fractions are 1 over 2 and 5 over 2. And then the last guided example using midpoint is they gave us point J is at 3, 5. M is the midpoint of segment JK. So we're missing our other endpoint somewhere over here. And we're going to use slope, or midpoint, to find it. And so I'm going to start by tracing a path from point J to M. So I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then to the right 2. So we move down 5, right 2. And now we're going to do that same thing from M to find where point K would be. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the right 2. And so K would be located here at 7, negative 5. All right, moving on to a couple of the review questions. Using coordinate geometry, so determine the slope of the line. We would go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Over to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, leaving me with negative 8 over 4, which reduces to a negative 2. For the next one, what is the length of the segment? If I were to use our Pythagorean theorem from one side to the other, I went up 1, and I went to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you square both of those, you get 1 plus 6 squared is 36. And then you would take the square root of that, leaving you with square root 37. Question 3, find the midpoint between A and B. So remember, you are taking the average of the x coordinates, so 5 plus 3, and the average of that, so we would divide by 2. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then the average of the y, so 7 plus 9 divided by 2, 16 divided by 2 gives us 8. Final question, if A is at 3, -5, M is the endpoint, M is at 7, 7, M is the midpoint of A, B, what are the coordinates of the endpoint B? So to get from A to the midpoint, for our X coordinates, so from 3 to a +7, we add 4. So now to get from 7 to the endpoint of B, we would have to add 4 again. So 7 plus 4 is 11. For the Y coordinates, to go from a -5 up to a +7, we went up 12. And then to do that same thing for the Y coordinate of B, we would add 12 to 7 to our midpoint point, and that gives us 19. And that's it.